The scene begins with a huge white castle. The hero of the story kneels before the queen. The queen places a sword on his shoulder and tells him that, from this moment on, she appoints him as the governor of the border territory. The hero silently asks himself, what does a border governor even mean? Soon, noise and commotion fill the castle after the queen's announcement, but she orders everyone to be quiet. Then she calls out to the hero and asks if he's deaf, but he quickly replies, "No, your majesty." The queen then asks why he isn't accepting his title. The hero falls silent, looks at her in panic, and thinks to himself, what kind of situation is this that I'm seeing right now? What am I supposed to do? Finally, the hero speaks and begs her to reconsider her decision, pleading with her not to proceed with it. When the queen hears this, she asks if he intends to defy her will again. The hero responds, "I could never commit such a disgraceful act, your majesty," and adds that being appointed by someone as great as her to such an honorable position is a privilege for him. But then he asks her, what does a border governor actually mean? The queen gives him a terrifying look and says, "What did you just say to me?" He replies again, "Your majesty." Hearing the word once more, the queen becomes angry and says, "For you to call the queen of Cain, your majesty, means you don't recognize me as queen." The hero quickly tries to fix his mistake and says, "No, your highness, I didn't mean that. I just temporarily lost my sense of awareness because of your overwhelming greatness." End quote. A magician then conjures up an image of a desert, and the queen tells the hero that this is the territory he'll be ruling. The audience murmurs in surprise. A woman says that this desert is called the city at the end of the world. A man adds that it might be shown as a city on the map, but in reality, it's just barren land with no mayor or residents. He's heard that there are more monsters than people there. The queen slams her sword into the ground and orders everyone to be quiet. She then announces that from this moment on, the city at the end of the world will now be called the Tamer's Territory. The Deputy Minister of Internal Affairs speaks up and tells the queen that he has never heard of a title called Border Governor and asks what it means. The queen responds, "Of course, you haven't heard of it before. I just created it." The hero is shocked by her answer. The queen then smiles and says to him, "Congratulations. You're now the first border governor in the continent's history." The hero, filled with disappointment, replies that her generosity is truly overflowing. The queen then raises her sword and hits him on the head with the hilt. His head swells up in pain, and he curses her silently. We then learn that, according to the game's story, he was originally supposed to become the captain of the royal guard, Tamer Gorin, but later suffered an accident and died a tragic death. The next scene shows the hero in a state of madness. Two soldiers standing in front of him are whispering. One says, "Captain, why is he acting like this?" 2-7. The other replies, "I don't know. But ever since he was redeployed, he's been saying strange things." The hero then screams to himself, "Why did I become such a low-level character? Why did I end up inside the game instead of keeping my original identity?" He yells again, "I should never have accepted that mission." The scene then shifts back to the city. The hero wakes up from his sleep. His name is Young, 27 years old, and he works as a logistics center employee. Looking out the window, he sees two children and thinks to himself, the kids must have gone to school by now. Young's life has stayed the same ever since his parents passed away 3 years ago. He has many dreams he hasn't fulfilled but has been working hard to provide a decent life for his family. After finishing moving some cargo, Young checks the time and notices it's lunch break. He goes to the rest area and grabs his phone to play the only game he plays daily, Dice Covenant. He opens the game and decides to complete his daily quests first before choosing which character to play. He looks at a character named Barda, a shaman with a special skill called Taming. This ability allows Young to turn enemies into allies. Weak monsters can be tamed quickly, while stronger ones take longer. He tells himself he doesn't need to upgrade his soldiers since he can recruit enemy units instead. Young fights an ogre in the game, tames it, and defeats it easily. Then, suddenly, a notification pops up with an urgent quest titled, "Defense of the End of the World Zone." He checks the mission details and is shocked to read that if he completes it, he can exchange his in-game points for real money, at a rate of 10,001 per point after finishing the quest. He also learns that he'll receive 5 premium grade items as rewards, which he can sell later for even more points. But then another notification appears, warning that the quest level is set to hard, and that there are no retries after failure. Soon, messages start flooding the chat as everyone in the game gets excited about the mission. Young thinks to himself about whether he should accept it or not. He tells himself that all the equipment he currently owns in the game wouldn't even be worth $1,000,000. But if he wins the reward, he could finally let the kids eat whatever they want. He decides to start the quest and clicks join. The notification turns red, showing that extreme difficulty mode has been activated. Then, he hears a mysterious voice from nowhere, followed by a red alert, saying that failure in this mission will not only delete the player's data but also cause the player's death in real life. It also says the player cannot quit or log out. Suddenly, Young finds himself standing in front of a massive, terrifying dragon, and another message appears, saying the player cannot leave the game until the mission is completed. That's how Young's story begins. He now finds himself inside the game, inhabiting the body of Tamer Gorin. In this game world, humans can only be resurrected once by medics, but Gorin had already died once before during a mission. As he was being revived, Young's soul entered Gorin's body. However, in exchange, he lost access to Gorin's skills and was given a new ability instead, Enlightenment. Young then asks the status window if it's sure that time in the real world is paused. A message confirms that real-world time has been frozen since the moment he entered the game, and he'll return to the same moment once the quest is completed. Young feels relieved reading this since he was worried about his younger siblings. Returning to the present, Young has now been appointed commander of the region. He's inside a tent when Lillian, his assistant, walks in and asks if he's okay. Young replies that he's fine. Lillian seems troubled because Tamer Gorin has been acting differently since his death and revival. Young notices that when he looks into her eyes, notification windows appear showing her stats and mental state. Lillian asks him what this notification window is that he keeps mentioning since he's been saying that word repeatedly throughout their journey. Young is caught off guard and realizes the only way to make the notification window appear is by saying its name aloud. That's why he's been repeating it so much. Then Lillian asks if he remembers the first time they met. Young nods, saying, of course, he remembers, while thinking to himself that he's played this character countless times before. Lillian asks him to repeat what he told her that day. The scene shifts to a flashback. Lillian is crying in the forest, and Tamer Gorin extends his hand to her, saying, come with me. In the present, a soldier enters the tent, interrupting them, and tells Young that all the soldiers are waiting for him. Young says he's coming. He places his hand on Lillian's shoulder, says her name with a smile, and she blushes, thinking to herself that he remembers. On the training grounds, Young stands before the soldiers. He notices that their loyalty and affection level toward him is at 50. He recalls that on his first day, it was over 90 but understands that's because no sane person wants to go with him to the city at the end of the world. Young thinks that Gorin, the original owner of this body, was intelligent and charismatic, while he himself isn't as smart or educated, so he prays that Gorin helps him somehow. One soldier asks what will happen to them. Young replies that he's been appointed their commander but shocks everyone when he tells them that they're the only ones who can choose their own future. Another soldier thinks to himself that Young is asking them to follow him into nothingness, into a place full of monsters, while nobles everywhere have mocked them. Then Young raises his hand and speaks loudly. What's the point of taking all the glory and wealth for myself? If I had accepted the position of captain of the royal guard, I could have lived a life of luxury, but what would have happened to you all? You'd be sleeping in the wilderness, surrounded by monsters. He continues, I chose to be with you and share both joy and sorrow together. A notification appears stating that the soldiers' loyalty and affection toward Young have increased. He continues, if you come with me, I promise to repay your efforts. Even if we face hardships and suffering instead of comfort, even if we sleep in caves instead of warm houses in the end, you'll say that this time was worth the struggle. Another notification appears showing that their loyalty has risen again. Young looks at the soldiers in awe and continues, you will conquer lands that even the founding king himself couldn't take. Whoever among you is willing to follow me, step forward. After finishing his speech, the soldiers cheer with passion, raising their hands and shouting that they'll follow him to the edge of the continent. Young smiles at the sight, and a notification pops up saying, Inspiration skill level increased from 1 to 2. After that, Young returns to the castle and meets the queen. The queen asks him what he wants. Young replies and asks her for some soldiers. The queen tells him that she's already entrusted him with full command of his troops. Young confirms that and tells her that he's successfully convinced all his soldiers to follow him. The queen is surprised to hear this and asks why he needs more soldiers. She tells him that if he needs mages or merchants, he can appoint them himself. Young looks at her and asks her to pardon some prisoners in exchange for taking them with him. Then, Young goes to the prison and meets the warden, telling him that he's there to release a few prisoners. The warden is shocked at first, but Young shows him an official document stating his authority. One of the guards escorts Young to see the prisoners. The guard introduces a prisoner named Gaggle and says that he's been sentenced to 15 years for multiple thefts. Young checks his status window and sees that all his stats are extremely low. Young tells the guard that he's trying to use him to get rid of the more troublesome inmates, but the guard plays dumb. Young mutters to himself that no one in this prison seems useful to him until he notices a female healer behind bars. Surprised, Young asks the guard why a healer would be imprisoned. The guard tells him that she's the priestess Rubia and that she's been locked up for 2 attempted murders, one of which was successful. Young is puzzled and asks how it's 2 attempts but 1 successful kill. The guard explains that Rubia killed a man, revived him, and then killed him again. Rubia suddenly asks the guard if what she killed counts as a human being. The guard replies, "Of course not. A duplicate is just a monster that looks like a human." Rubia then screams at him, "If you know that, why do you say I killed a human? What I killed wasn't a person. It was a monster." She continues yelling, "How can you call a creature that kidnaps children and sells them to a dark wizard human?" When Young hears her, he comments that killing that monster was justified. Rubia smiles at him and says, "I don't know which noble you are, but you're making sense." Then she asks him, "Do you know why I killed that monster twice?" Young answers, "Because you could only kill him twice, you can only revive something once." Rubia confirms that and adds that if she could have revived him 100 times, she would have killed him 100 times. Rubia apologizes for forgetting to introduce herself and does so properly. A notification appears showing Young that he currently has no priest in his party and that Rubia would be a valuable addition. Young checks her status window and notes that while she's dangerous, her power levels are impressive. He introduces himself and tells her he's willing to free her if she joins his team and helps him. He adds that he'll appoint her as a battle priest and grant her honorary citizenship, along with a special authority. When Rubia asks what kind of authority, Young tells her she'll be allowed to punish the guilty. Rubia agrees, extends her hand, and shakes his, saying she's with him. After that, Young continues exploring the rest of the prison. He enters another room and asks why the ceiling is so low. The guard tells him that this section holds non-humans like dwarves and hobbits. Young's eyes fall on a young hobbit, and he asks the guard why he's imprisoned. The guard says the hobbit is serving 7 years for theft. Young asks what he stole. The hobbit answers, "I tried to steal a woman's heart, but when I failed, I stole her house instead. If I can't live with the one I love, I'll at least live in the house she used to." Young mutters to himself that this guy is crazy but still checks his status out of curiosity. The hobbit's name is Bonnell, and surprisingly, his stats aren't bad at all. The window also shows that Bonnell has sharp reflexes and used to be an assassin. Young decides that someone with assassin skills could be useful and tries to recruit him. He tells Bonnell that he's already served a year and still has 6 to go, which must be tough. Bonnell agrees, saying the food is disgusting, so bad that even ghouls wouldn't eat it, and adds that the work here is exhausting, he just wants out. Young notices that he complained about the food before the labor, so he decides to use that angle. Young tells him that if he joins, he'll get a delicious meal every day because their cook is amazing. But Bonnell replies that even in prison, if he spends a bit, he can buy decent food from outside. So, Young asks the guard what today's lunch is. The guard replies, fermented sardine, jelly, mud salad, black bread, and minotaur bone broth. Upon hearing that, Bonnell is horrified, stands up suddenly, and yells that he'll go with Young anywhere. Young welcomes him to the team. Later, Young stands before his mansion and says that the Tamer of Goron received the place years ago as a reward for slaying monsters. He recalls hearing that the Tamer never stayed there for more than 6 months because of constant travel. He also had many employees, but only 1 male servant and 1 maid. The servant ran away to a place called End of the World, but the maid stayed. Young remembers from the game that 4 years ago, the Tamer rescued a group of captives from bandits, among them a young red-haired girl. The Tamer asked her if she had anywhere to go. When she didn't answer, he said, "Come with me," surprising her. Returning to the present, Young realizes that this maid is that same girl the Tamer saved 4 years ago. He then notes that selling the mansion could bring in a large sum and starts getting excited about the idea. The maid misunderstands and thinks Young means to sell her, but he quickly clarifies that he's selling the mansion, not her. The maid sighs in relief, knowing she won't be sold to another household. Her name is Peach, and she's obsessed with Young, willing to do anything he asks except leave him. She smiles and tells Young she's ready to go with him to the ends of the continent. He thanks her, but then her expression changes and she warns him that if he leaves her, she'll chase him to the end of the world. A notification pops up for Young saying he can dismiss her, but it would cost 1,000 points and has only a 0.1% success rate. Young mutters that even if he had those points, he wouldn't waste them on something like that. Still, he feels uncomfortable since she's about the same age as his younger sister and keeps calling him Master. Peach asks, "Are you alright, my lord?" Then hugs him, saying she heard he suffers from headaches since being resurrected. Embarrassed, Young tells her she's choking him and asks her to let go. She says, "How can you say something so cruel when I'm worried about you?" Young replies, "No, I just meant give me some space." Then he tells her not to call him Master anymore, but Commander instead. Peach turns away crying and says that he'll always be her master, adding that she knows he's been promoted to Commander, but wonders if that means the feelings of a lowly maid like her no longer matter. Young tells her he understands her feelings, thanks her sincerely, and says that if she chooses to come with him, the journey ahead won't be easy. The comfort and peace of life in the mansion will be gone. The road ahead filled with danger and monsters. He warns her that she'll have to take on far harder duties than she does now. He assures her he won't force her to go, and that she can stay at the mansion until he returns. He tells her to decide for herself and thanks her either way. A notification appears, saying Young has gained 20 points as a reward. Suddenly, Peach's eyes sparkle with heart-shaped light as she tells him she'll go with him anywhere in the world and do anything for him. Peach's taming affection increases significantly from 100 to 150, and her willpower rises from 15 to 19. Young welcomes Peach to the team and says they'll discuss her salary after they hunt a few monsters. After that, Young stands in front of a horse and wonders why it's not listening to him. A notification appears, explaining that the horse doesn't have a name, that it has a strong sense of leadership among other horses, that it never lets anyone ride it except its owner, and that its instincts tell it that its owner has changed. The notification also tells Young that he can tame the horse using 5 points, and that if he tries to tame it without using those points, his success rate will only be 10%. Lillian, standing behind him, comments in surprise that he doesn't know how to saddle a horse, since the Gurren's tamer used to spend so much time with his horse, more time than he spent sitting on a chair. Young decides to give the horse a name. He says the horse feels like his little sister, so he'll name it Myung. The horse gets very happy when it hears its new name and allows Young to ride it. Its affection points increase. After that, Young and Lillian head toward the Great Fordwar Road, which connects the capital, Kania, to other parts of the city. Monsters usually don't come near this road. Young starts to feel bored from the long ride and wonders if the road ever ends. Lillian tells him she needs to talk to him. Young thinks to himself that she's been glancing at him the whole way, which means she probably wanted to say something. He tells her that he told her to get some good rest before the trip started. Lillian apologizes for not following his orders. Young says there's no need to apologize and asks about the information. Lillian glances behind her, then says she's got reports that there are monsters on the road leading to the Rainlands. Young is surprised by this. Lillian says she doesn't know why, but she's sure the reports aren't just rumors, because soldiers actually saw monsters heading toward the road to the western plains. Young scratches his head, saying he thought their trip would be easy. Lillian asks what they should do, since they need to decide now whether to continue on this route or change their course. Young starts thinking. A notification appears, saying that his future journey will be determined by his choice, and that he's got 2 options. The first option is to continue on the same road, where he'll encounter tough monsters, but in return, he might gain valuable resources and talents. The second option is to take another road, where monster appearances will be much lower, but the path will be longer and consume more resources. Young feels torn between the 2, adventure or safety. He asks Lillian for her opinion, which surprises her since he's never asked anyone's opinion before. Lillian says she trusts him in any decision he makes, but advises that he shouldn't tell the other soldiers about the monsters, as that would lower their morale and cause chaos. Young agrees she's right, but says he's still going to tell them. Lillian is puzzled and asks why. Young says it's his duty as their leader to inform his soldiers of the coming dangers. If they go in blindly and get surprised by monsters, the panic would be even worse. Young then raises his hand, signaling the soldiers to stop, and tells them that, according to the reports, monsters are waiting for them ahead on the road. Some soldiers look bothered, others don't seem to care, while Rubia smiles and gets excited because she was bored and looking forward to a fight. Banwell, however, worries and says he should have stayed in prison instead. Other soldiers get angry, saying this breaks their agreement. Lillian orders everyone to be quiet and warns that anyone who speaks again will be punished. Young tells them he's decided to stay on this road because there's no guarantee they won't meet monsters, even if they take another one. Then he tells the merchants not to worry because he guarantees their safety. He reminds them that they have the right to cancel their contract, but there's no guarantee they won't run into bandits or wild beasts on their way back, so it's safer to stay with him and let his company's soldiers protect them. Young's persuasion skill increases from level 2 to 3, and the soldiers' dissatisfaction goes down, but it's still there. One of the merchants raises his hand and says he understands, but thinks their pay should increase due to the added danger. A prompt appears for Young, saying that if he agrees to increase the merchants' wages because of the risk, their dissatisfaction will drop to 0, but the soldiers' dissatisfaction will rise. If he refuses, the merchants' dissatisfaction will increase, and they'll work less efficiently, which would slow down the journey. Young realizes he'll lose either way. If he pays the merchants more, the soldiers will be unhappy because they don't get a raise too. But then he looks at Peach and remembers the time he tried to persuade her. He also had 2 bad options then, but he chose a third one instead. Young tells the merchants that if a monster shows up and he kills it, he'll share part of the loot with them. But in return, they'll need to help move barriers and traps. The merchant smiles and agrees. Then, Young continues, saying that monster hunting rewards will go first to the soldiers. That makes the soldiers happy, and they smile. Young tells his soldiers that up to this point, they were state soldiers, so he didn't have the right to hand out rewards as he pleased. But now, they're his personal troops, which means he can distribute prizes and loot however he wants. He declares that any soldier who kills a monster will earn wealth. A notification appears, praising Young for finding an alternative solution outside the 2 given options. It also says that the soldiers' and merchants' affection levels toward Young have increased noticeably. Everyone rejoices and starts chanting his name. At the Western Plains checkpoint, Young talks to one of his soldiers and asks, "Is it true there's a village near the main road?" The soldier confirms, saying they've received reports that troll monsters have reached a nearby village, and they got an official warning in case any trade caravans pass through and get attacked. Young tells him to report immediately if any urgent news arrives. Then, Young goes to sit under a tree to rest. Peach places her hand on his shoulder and asks if he's tired. Young tells her to go rest too. Peach gets upset, noticing that Young seems different from before. She thinks to herself that she heard this change is due to his resurrection. She also complains internally that her feet hurt from walking the entire way with them. She expected Young to buy her a donkey to ride, but Young tells her he doesn't have the money for that and that he can't treat her differently from the others. Peach thinks to herself that she'll endure his harshness for now, but she's sure that one day she'll sit beside him in a carriage. A group of soldiers chat among themselves, surprised that there are monsters on the main road since they thought none ever came near it. Rubia interrupts them, asking for a lighter to light her pipe. After she lights it and starts smoking, she offers one to Young. He accepts and starts smoking too. Rubia sits next to him and asks why his family isn't with him. Young tells her his family died in an accident. Rubia apologizes and asks if they were killed by monsters. Young confirms and says they were indeed killed by a monster, but in his mind, he remembers that his family was killed by a monster who'd been jailed 4 times, then got out and ran them over with a car before fleeing. Young thinks to himself that someone like that is no human, they're a monster. Rubia says that in that case, they have something in common, and Young replies, "Then let's work well together." After that, Young and his soldiers continue their journey. Suddenly, Young raises his hand and orders the soldiers to stop. Lillian asks what's wrong. A side mission notification appears for Young to protect the luggage cart from the monster Mandragorani and to kill 30 monsters. Young says he's fought this monster before in the game and remembers how annoying it is. The monster looks like a deer. But when it screams, it weakens allies' attacks and slows their speed, and it even screams as it dies. Young tells himself that his first goal is to protect the luggage cart, but he doesn't know when the monster will appear. Suddenly, he notices that the wind has stopped. He tells his soldiers to get ready for battle because the monsters are about to arrive. He orders the first squad to grab their spears and form a circle around the cart to protect it, planting any spare spears into the ground. The soldiers follow his commands and surround the cart from all sides. Then, Young orders Peach and the merchants to take cotton, soak it in water, and stuff it into the soldiers' ears. Next, he tells the second and third squads to come with him, spread out, and form a search line. He instructs Banwal to throw stones toward the western bushes. Banwal obeys and throws the stones, which hit the monster. The creature appears, screaming in rage, and charges at Young. Young is shocked when he sees it, and orders the soldiers to advance. As he moves toward the monster, he thinks to himself that he's never swung a sword before, that he doesn't know what to do, but he can't just stand still. Not when Lillian might look at him with admiration again. The monster's scream hurts the soldiers badly, they can't bear it, even with their ears plugged, but Young remains unaffected and wonders why. Then he realizes it might be because he got used to the screams of deer when he served in the army. A notification appears, confirming that he's right. The monster's scream has no effect on Young because he's accustomed to a similar sound in real life. Young suddenly remembers he forgot to cover the horse's ears and orders Rubia to cast a protection spell on them. The horses panic as the monster approaches and lose control, but the horse Young is riding suddenly charges straight at the monster with incredible speed, slamming its head and knocking it down, leaving Young stunned. The impact sends Young flying off the horse and straight toward the monster. He screams in fear midair before falling onto the creature and killing it. Young earns 5 points as a reward for slaying the monster. A notification congratulates him for killing the monster leader at the start of the battle and grants him 5 extra points for the achievement, Leader First. Young is completely bewildered by what just happened. After the leader's death, the other monsters stop their attack. Surrounded by them, Young thinks to himself that the only blade he'd ever used before this was a kitchen knife. He looks around at the surrounding monsters, trying to figure out what kind they are. These monsters are kind, peaceful, and hate hunting. They usually eat grass quietly, but recently a group of their kind went mad and started attacking humans. Now, the monsters are terrified after Young killed their leader. Young can tame them using 3 points. If he tries to tame them without using points, the success rate will be 40%. But no matter the type of monster, taming during battle is difficult. Young begins the taming attempt, and monsters No 008 and No 009 are successfully tamed. They become allies. Young can now give them names. He orders the 2 tamed monsters to scream. The monsters are terrified of Young and start screaming. Their screams affect only other monsters, not allies. Young uses this to his advantage and kills the other monsters. While fighting, Young notices that using his sword feels easier than expected, because his body is so strong that the sword feels light. Surprised, he remarks that he knew Gurren was a strong knight but didn't expect him to be this powerful, as Gurren had superhuman blood. Then, a notification appears telling Young that the 2+1 trait has been activated and that Gurren's skills cannot be used, but his physical characteristics have been added to Young's body. In summary, Young's maximum strength is now 3 times greater than that of a normal human. His sword glows blue, and he feels happy hearing this, though he finds the name of the trait strange and wonders if it means Gurren is 2 and he is 1. He continues, easily killing monsters one after another, and orders the soldiers to join in the attack. The 2 tamed monsters seem uneasy, clearly distressed that Young is killing their own kin. Young tells them to stay put and not move. He instructs them to scream loudly if they sense any danger. The monsters obey with high spirits while Young returns to battle. Lillian calls out to Young as she rushes to help him. She sees one of the monsters about to pounce on Young, but without hesitation, she drives her spear through the monster's head. The soldiers still can't bear the sound of the monster's screams. Young orders them to cut the monster's necks, having noticed that their only weak point is decapitation. Young looks at the tamed monsters, ordering Monster No 9 to scream while telling Monster No 8 to wait. The enemy monsters panic at the sound and can't bear it. Young smiles and says to them, "Feels awful, trying to fight with that scream ringing in your ears, doesn't it?" Then, he has No 8 scream and No 9 wait. The tamed monsters follow his orders exactly. and the enemy monsters start bleeding from their ears. Lillian, puzzled, asks Young why the monsters are attacking each other. He says he'll explain later but tells her not to kill the 2 tamed ones. Then, he notices the remaining monsters running toward the supply wagon and orders his soldiers to chase them. Young tells Monster no, 8 to come to him, then asks it to let him ride on its back. The monster is shocked by the request. Lillian is stunned when she sees Young actually riding the monster. Young tells it that if it has nothing to say, it should just say the word Mandragora. Then, Young charges off on the monster's back to catch up with the wagon. The soldiers try to reorganize themselves. Banyul throws stones at the monsters while the soldiers point their spears to keep them away. Banyul yells at the monsters, saying they attacked the wrong people. One of the stones hits a monster in the head, it howls in pain and collapses. The rest of the monsters go into a frenzy and rush toward Rubia and the soldiers. Rubia chants some magic words, and a large golden barrier appears around her and the merchants, stopping the monsters' advance. She then closes her eyes and continues chanting. Golden projectiles shoot from the wall and strike the monsters mercilessly, killing them. After that, Young orders everyone to set up barricades to stop any monsters from escaping and helps with the work himself. The monsters panic when they see there's no way out. Young and his men surround them with spears, and he says, "Welcome. Is this your first time inside a deer pen?" Then he attaches 3 spears to a wagon, turning it into a battle cart. The frightened monsters don't want to die. Young notices one of them has a taming level of 12 and says this monster must be very strong, and was likely forced here against its will. He tells it, "If you listen to me, I'll be merciful." The monster agrees immediately, trembling in fear. Young hugs it and welcomes it to his team, saying it would be a waste to kill so many of them when they could join his side instead. Lillian rushes to Young as he warns her not to kill the cooperating monsters since they're now part of their group. She asks if he's okay. Young smiles and says he's fine, but Lillian clarifies that she meant if his head is okay, wondering if he's lost his mind after being resurrected. She exclaims, "How can you turn dozens of monsters into allies? You must be crazy." The soldiers are uneasy about it, and one of them asks Young what he plans to do with the monsters after taming them. A notification appears, saying the soldiers are very worried. If Young doesn't reassure them, his taming level will drop significantly. Young scratches his head when he sees the message, saying he knows that already. Then he notices he's holding some monster fur in his hand. He comments that it's very soft, softer than anything in the army, then mentions that it could be quite useful. He gathers the soldiers and merchants and begins talking to them, saying he knows what he's about to say sounds strange, but asks them to listen carefully. Young explains that, as they all know, he was resurrected, and as a result, he awakened a new skill, monster taming, the ability to turn monsters into allies of humans. Next, he orders monsters No. 8 and 9 to step forward, but they don't move. Young asks what's wrong. A notification appears, saying the monsters are too scared and traumatized by seeing their kind killed and by the soldiers staring at them. Young talks to them gently, reassuring them. He calls himself their big brother and promises that nothing bad will happen if they follow his orders, and that he'll let them eat tasty hay. The monsters relax after hearing his words. Young then tells Monster No. 8 to lie on its stomach and stick out its tongue, and Monster No. 9 to stand on 2 legs for 5 seconds. They follow his commands exactly. The soldiers can't believe their eyes, seeing monsters obeying a human's words. Young tells the monsters to go rest for a bit. The soldiers notice the monsters don't even try to escape. One soldier says he never thought he'd witness something like this in his life. Then Young says to the soldiers that they saw for themselves how these monsters helped in the battle. He explains that monsters are also good at carrying heavy loads and have the ability to weaken other monsters, which will help them in the future. Young picks up a horn wrapped in leaves and asks the soldiers if they know what it's for. He tells them the horn and leaves are great for restoring energy. Then he asks Beach to bring him some hot water. He calls a soldier named Yak and tells him to come forward. Young says he knows Yak has trouble sleeping and wakes up sweaty and tired. Yak is surprised that Young knows this. Young explains to himself that he knows because he can see Yak's status window. Young tells Yak that as a commander, it's his duty to care for his soldiers. He hands him a cup of tea and tells him to drink it, assuring him that if anything bad happens, he'll take responsibility. Yak hesitates but drinks it. He's shocked the moment he does, feeling a huge improvement in his physical condition. Rubia grabs his hand, amazed by what just happened. She holds it for a while, and Yak feels embarrassed. Rubia says his hands are cold, and she's warming them up. Young gives the horns to one of the merchants, saying they could earn a lot selling them in the eastern continent. Smiling, he adds that they'll keep hunting monsters to collect more of these horns. Monsters, no. 8 and 9 look down sadly when they hear that. Then Young asks the soldiers what's so strange about taming monsters. He explains that in ancient times, humans even tamed dragons and other types of beasts. Rubia comments that fixing monsters will be difficult since fixing humans isn't easy either. She admits she has no right to talk, given she was imprisoned, but asks what will happen if the monsters turn on them later. Young reassures her, saying he can see something called the calm level. He tells her that if one of the tamed monsters causes trouble, she can be the one to punish them. Rubia smiles, saying she's always wanted to punish monsters. Young goes to the tamed monsters and asks if they'll ever attack humans in the future. They answer that they never will. Young explains that their contract is simple. The monsters will help in his territory, and in return, he'll provide them with shelter and good food. He says he'll treat the sick ones and give rest days to those who are tired. The monsters are happy and agree. A notification appears, saying Young received 10 points as a reward for calming and taming monsters without using any skill points. His calm skill increased from level 2 to 4. Then, Young looks at his soldiers and the merchants. He asks them if anyone has any objections, and everyone stays silent. A notification appears showing that Young successfully completed the submission and earned 13 points from the monsters he killed. Young notices that he only got points from the monsters he killed, not the ones he tamed. Young says he expected that since it was the same when he played the game before. But Young says he doesn't care about losing a few points in exchange for taming monsters and turning them to his side. Young shouts to his soldiers, telling them he's happy that none of them were hurt, and says that the sun has set, so it's time to celebrate, drink, and eat meat. The soldiers cheer his name with joy and excitement. After that, Young starts grilling the meat of the monsters they killed and tells his soldiers that they shouldn't bury those monsters because other beasts might smell them and come their way, which would be dangerous for anyone passing by. Lillian tells him they could burn the monsters instead. Young replies that he's burning them on the grill, and tells Lillian that the tea she made from the monsters' horns tasted great, which is why he wants her to trust him. The soldiers relax and drink the tea that Peach serves them. But the cook seems puzzled about why Young insists on cooking monster meat when they already have other types of meat. The cook's name is Jerry. Jerry's cooking is known for its delicious taste and health benefits, but his food presentation isn't very appetizing. Rubia says it's her first time eating the meat of monsters that used to threaten humans, so she prays that bacteria and viruses stay away from it. Rubia looks at the disgusting-looking meat and asks Young if he's sure it's even edible. Young tells her the meat is more edible than she'd expect because of the cook's skill in properly butchering the monsters and draining the blood completely. Young looks at the cook and reminds him that he's the one responsible for the good food the soldiers have been eating all along, and tells him to follow his instructions when cooking this monster meat. The cook tells Young that he's never cooked monster meat before and that he'll follow his instructions, though he still doubts the meat will taste good or even be edible. Young starts with the steps. First, he tells the cook to separate the fat from the stomach's skin. Then, wrap the fat tightly around the loin meat, tie it firmly with string, and sprinkle seasonings on top. Next, place the loin piece on a metal tray and put it in the oven. After that, put the ribs on skewers with onions, and cook the meat at a medium temperature so it suits everyone's taste. The cook keeps complaining about everything, so Young threatens to throw him into the dragon's den if he keeps it up. Then Young orders the preparation of the salad. Peach notices Young holding something and asks what it is. Young tells her it's soy sauce and adds that he should have brought some kimchi too. Peach comments that those are the disgusting spices from the eastern continent and wonders how Young can like them. Young tells her that his taste doesn't matter, it's everyone else's that matters. He then tells her to add liquor and the horn tea she made to get rid of any bad smell. After that, Young asks Peach to squeeze some fruits and mix them with the spices. The cook still objects and doesn't like it, but Young tells him to just taste the meat. Young says to sprinkle rock salt on the meat and start eating. The cook cuts a piece, tastes it, and is amazed by how delicious it is. He apologizes to Young for doubting him and for his rudeness earlier. Young tells him that it's okay as long as he understands now. then asks him to continue grilling the skewers. Young's inspiration level rises from 4 to 6. The soldiers start devouring the meat eagerly, surprised that monster meat could taste this good. Young grabs some skewers and tells all the cooks to eat too, saying he'll handle the rest. The cooks and soldiers eat and drink the liquor heartily, enjoying every moment. A traveling merchant smells the cooking and asks what it is. Young smiles proudly at his dish and serves them a stew made of meat and vegetables, saying the name of the dish is mandragora and bulgogi. Everyone is fascinated by it. As night falls and everyone finishes eating, they all fall asleep. But Lillian stays awake, deep in thought about Young. She's puzzled by everything he does, like cooking monster meat himself, and personally serving food to both traders and soldiers. Lillian thinks to herself that she's never heard of a monster taming skill before, but she says she trusts her leader, Young. Then, she notices that Young is still awake in his tent, and decides to go talk to him. Before she enters, she sees a shadow moving as if someone is attacking Young, so she rushes into the tent, thinking he's under attack. But once inside, she finds Young alone, training with a combat dummy. Young explains that he's practicing swordsmanship because he lost his skills after being reincarnated. Lillian tells him she noticed that when she saw him fighting the monsters, his sword skills seemed worse than a beginner's. She says it's common to lose a skill after reincarnation, but there's something she wants to ask him. Young gets tense and says, "What do you want to know?" Lillian asks how his sword skills could get worse while his physical power increased. She tells him she saw him throw one of the monsters with one hand and cut through them easily, even though his sword technique was sloppy. Young avoids the question, saying, "When you lose something, you gain something else in return." But Lillian tells him she's never heard of this monster taming skill before, and that she's not happy about him taking prisoners and adding them to his team, nor about using monsters and turning them to his side. She says that the leader she knew wouldn't have done those things even if he could. Young finishes her sentence and says, "Because those things go against the knight's code of honor, right?" He tells her that honor doesn't feed the citizens or protect them. Lillian tries to argue, but he cuts her off, saying he knows he's changed since being reborn, but he's trying to get back to who he used to be. He asks her to be patient with him, give him some time, trust him the way he trusts her, and not tell anyone else about this. Lillian apologizes, saying she's been making things harder on him instead of helping. She tells him that from now on, she'll start helping him. She picks up a wooden sword and tells him to grab it. Young is surprised by that, but Lillian says she's going to teach him swordsmanship. Young and Lillian take the wooden swords and head outside to train. Young thinks to himself that Joran was the one who taught Lillian how to use the sword and spear in the past. Lillian lunges at Young, saying she'll pay him back by teaching him sword skills this time, then strikes him hard. Later, Young walks back into his tent with a swollen head, saying she's way too violent. Peach gets angry when she sees his injury and says she won't forgive Lillian for hurting her master. Young tells Peach that she's more upset than he is. He asks her to go rest, but she asks if she can stay with him. He tells her instead to soak the remaining spices from the meal, but Peach complains that it's too much work. After she leaves, Young feels body pain and mutters that he should have asked her for a massage instead. He then tells himself it's good. He started learning the basics of combat since he really needs them. Young wonders what would happen if a group of monsters suddenly appeared and attacked him. He wouldn't have time to tame them then. He realizes he can't rely only on sword skills, so he's learning swordsmanship for self-defense, not as a main weapon. Young starts thinking about his options, saying a bow would be useless since too many others already use them, and a gun wouldn't help because they're hard to make and not efficient for killing monsters one by one. He concludes that the best weapon would be a small handheld cannon he can carry easily using his strength. With that, he could fight from range without having to engage monsters in close combat. His desire to use a cannon triggers a new skill, Artillery-nation. It makes fire control and aiming better when using cannons. Young gets excited reading the skill description because he used to handle cannons when he served in the military. But he notes that making a cannon would require a lot of resources and advanced technology. A notification then informs him that the region he controls contains many resources, including ancient magical stones. When Young hears ancient magical stones, he grabs his necklace and says he forgot he had one. He realizes that if he uses it, he could at least build one cannon. But he adds that even with the resources, he still needs the technology to create it. The system notifies Young that he can make up for the lack of technology by recruiting dwarf blacksmiths or mages into his team. Young remembers there were 2 dwarves in the prison and notes that he'll also need mages since they excel at wide area attacks. Another notification says that in an upcoming submission, he'll be able to choose between recruiting a dwarf or a mage. Just then, a soldier bursts into Young's tent, interrupting him, and says he has urgent news. Goblins and trolls have appeared in 2 nearby villages, and those villages need rescue immediately.